For 15 years, I watched my husband write the same check on the first of every month. $500 to his brother Marcus. I never questioned it because family takes care of family, right? But when I finally met Marcus at a cousin's funeral and mentioned how grateful he must be for all those years of support, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. He said he'd never received a single dollar from my husband, not 1 cent in 15 years. That's when I knew my entire marriage had been built on quicksand. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Dorothy Chen, and I am 74 years old. I've been carrying this story inside my chest for 23 years now, and it weighs on me like a stone that never stops pressing down. Some people say that time heals all wounds, but I think time just teaches you how to live with the scars. This is a story about deception that ran so deep it changed the color of everything I thought I knew about my life. It's about discovering that the person sleeping next to you every night for years can be a complete stranger. And it's about what happens when you finally decide to stop being a victim and start being a survivor. I was 51 years old when my world split open like rotten fruit. It was October of 2001, just a few weeks after the towers fell in New York, and the whole country was still walking around in a daze of grief and fear. Everything felt fragile then, like the world could crack apart at any moment. I remember that feeling in the air, that sense that nothing was certain anymore, that the ground beneath our feet could give way without warning. I had no idea how prophetic that feeling would turn out to be for my own life. The funeral was for Robert's cousin Diane, a woman I'd met maybe 3 times in all the years Robert and I had been married. She died suddenly of an aneurysm at 62, and the whole family gathered at a church in Sacramento for the service. Robert had been quiet during the drive up from our home in Fresno, but that wasn't unusual. My husband was never much of a talker, especially about feelings or family matters. He kept things inside, locked up tight, and I'd learned over the years not to pry too much. Some men are like that, I told myself. Reserved. Private. It didn't mean anything was wrong. We arrived at the church early, and people were milling around in the parking lot, that awkward pre-funeral gathering where no one quite knows what to say or do. I was smoothing down my black dress when I saw a man who looked so much like Robert that for a moment I thought I was seeing double. Same height, same build, same way of standing with his hands in his pockets. But his hair was lighter, more gray than Robert's, and when he turned around, I could see his face was rounder, softer somehow. I touched Robert's arm and said, "Is that Marcus?" Robert's whole body went stiff beside me. He didn't answer right away, just stared at his brother like he was seeing a ghost. Then he said yes in a voice that sounded strange and tight. "We should go inside." But I was already walking toward Marcus, my hand extended, a smile on my face. I'd been married to Robert for 15 years and I'd never met his brother in person. They'd had some kind of falling out before I came into the picture, or at least that's what Robert had always told me. Some family disagreement that had created distance between them. But Robert sent money every month without fail, and I'd always thought that showed real character, real loyalty. A man who takes care of his family even when things are difficult between them, that's a good man. That's what I'd always believed. "Marcus," I said, extending my hand. "I'm Dorothy, Robert's wife. It's so good to finally meet you. I'm just sorry it has to be under these circumstances." Marcus took my hand and shook it, but his face was confused. He glanced over my shoulder at Robert, who had come up behind me. "Dorothy," he said slowly, testing the name. "Robert's wife." "Yes," I said. "I know you two haven't seen each other in a long time, but I'm glad we're finally meeting. Family is so important, especially at times like this." Marcus was still looking at Robert with this strange expression, something between confusion and suspicion. "How long have you been married?" he asked, but he was asking Robert, not me. 15 years this past June," I said, smiling. "Best 15 years of my life." Marcus's eyebrows went up. 15 years, he repeated. "And you're just now meeting me?" "Well, I know you and Robert have had your difficulties," I said, feeling suddenly awkward. "But I've always admired how Robert has supported you all these years, even with the distance between you. He's never missed a month." The look on Marcus's face changed then. The confusion shifted into something else, something harder. "Supported me," he said. "What do you mean, supported me?" "The $500, I said. "Every month. Robert sends you $500 on the first of every month." Has for as long as I've known him. I felt Robert's hand on my elbow, gripping tight. Dorothy, he said, his voice low and urgent. We should go inside. The service is about to start. But Marcus was staring at his brother now with an expression I couldn't quite read. $500, he said slowly. Every month for 15 years. Robert, what is she talking about? I've never received any money from you. Not a dime. The parking lot seemed to go very quiet around us. Or maybe it was just that all the sound had been sucked out of my own ears. I looked at Marcus, then at Robert, then back at Marcus. What? I said. What do you mean you've never received any money? Marcus shook his head. Dorothy, I don't know what Robert's been telling you, but I haven't gotten any financial support from my brother. We barely speak. Haven't had a real conversation in probably 20 years. I felt like the ground was tilting under my feet. But the checks, I said stupidly. Every month. First of the month. $500 to Marcus Chen. I've seen them. I've watched Robert write them for 15 years. Robert's hand was still gripping my elbow, tight enough now that it hurt. Dorothy, please, he said. Not here. Not now. But I couldn't move. I was rooted to that spot in the church parking lot, staring at my husband's brother, trying to make sense of what he was saying. If you've been writing checks to someone named Marcus Chen, his brother said carefully, it hasn't been me. I don't know who's been cashing those checks, but it's not me. The world seemed to tilt and spin. I looked at Robert and saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Fear. Raw animal fear. And guilt. So much guilt it was practically radiating off him. What's going on? I said. My voice sounded far away, like it was coming from someone else. Robert, what's going on? We need to go, Robert said, pulling at my arm now. We'll talk about this later. At home. But Marcus stepped forward. No, he said. I think you need to talk about it now. Right here. Because if you've been lying to your wife for 15 years, telling her you're supporting me when you're not, then she deserves to know where that money has actually been going. Other family members were starting to look over at us. I could see Robert's Aunt Patricia watching with interest, could see cousins I barely knew beginning to pay attention. Robert's face was red now, a deep crimson that started at his collar and worked its way up. This is not the time or place, he said through clenched teeth. Diane's funeral is about to start. We can discuss this later. But I wasn't going to let it go. Not now. Not after what Marcus had just said. Tell me, I said, and my voice was stronger now, steadier. Tell me right now where that money has been going. If it's not going to Marcus, then where? Robert looked around at the growing audience, at his family members watching this drama unfold in the church parking lot. Then he looked at me and I saw something crumble in his face. Can we please just get through this funeral, he said quietly. Please, Dorothy. I promise I'll explain everything when we get home. Just let me get through this funeral. I should have said no. I should have demanded answers right there in that parking lot in front of God and everybody. But old habits die hard, and I'd spent 15 years being the accommodating wife, the understanding partner. So I nodded stiffly and said, fine. We'll get through the funeral. But then you're going to tell me everything. The service was a blur. I sat in that pew next to my husband and I didn't hear a single word the minister said. I couldn't tell you what hymns we sang or who gave the eulogy or anything about the reception afterward. All I could think about was those checks. 15 years of checks. $500 a month. That was $90,000. $90,000 that had gone somewhere to someone and I had no idea who or where or why. My husband had looked me in the eye every month for 15 years and lied. What else had he lied about? What else didn't I know? The drive home to Fresno was silent and tense. Robert kept his eyes on the road and I stared out the window at the flat Central Valley landscape rolling past. Brown fields and strip malls and the same highway we'd driven 1,000 times. Everything looked exactly the same as it had this morning, but nothing was the same. Nothing would ever be the same again. When we finally pulled into our driveway, into the neat suburban neighborhood where we'd lived for 12 years, I sat in the car for a long moment before opening the door. Inside the house, I went straight to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the glass. Robert followed me in and stood by the doorway, his suit jacket still on, his tie still knotted tight. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Talk, I said. I didn't turn around to look at him. Just stared out the kitchen window at our backyard, at the lawn Robert mowed every Saturday, At the garden where I grew tomatoes and zucchini. Talk right now. There was a long silence. Then Robert said, her name is Linda. Linda Martinez. I've been supporting her for 15 years. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My brain tried to process this information, but it was like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It made no sense. Supporting her, I repeated. What does that mean, supporting her? Another long pause. He started, then stopped. She's my other wife, Dorothy. I'm married to both of you. The glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. Water and glass shards spread across the tile. I turned around slowly and looked at my husband. At this man I'd shared a bed with for 15 years. This man I'd cooked dinner for and done laundry for and built a life with. Your other wife, I said. The words felt foreign in my mouth, impossible. You're married to someone else. Robert's face was gray. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. For how long, I asked. How long have you been married to her? Since before you, he said quietly. Since 1982. Dorothy, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant for it to go on this long. The room was spinning. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. You've been married to her since 1982, I said. I tried to do the math, but my brain wasn't working right. That's 19 years. You've been married to her for 19 years and to me for 15. Robert, that's bigamy. That's illegal. I couldn't even find words for what it was. I know, he said miserably. I know it's illegal. I know it's wrong. But Dorothy, you have to understand, it just happened. I met you and I fell in love with you and I couldn't give you up. But I couldn't leave her either. She needed me. She still needs me. Who is she? I demanded. Where does she live? How have you been doing this for 15 years without me knowing? He sank into one of the kitchen chairs and put his head in his hands. She lives in Modesto, he said. About an hour north. I told you I had to travel for work sometimes, remember? Those business trips to Sacramento and San Francisco? I was going to see her. Staying with her. I thought about all those trips over the years. 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes more. He'd pack a small bag and kiss me goodbye and say he'd be back in a few days. I'd never questioned it. He worked in agricultural equipment sales and I knew his territory covered Northern California. It had never occurred to me to doubt him. Does she know about me? I asked. Does Linda know I exist? He shook his head. No. She thinks I travel for work too. She thinks I'm on the road selling equipment when I'm here with you. She has no idea you exist. So we're both being lied to, I said. For 15 years you've been lying to both of us. How could you do that, Robert? How could you look me in the eye every single day and lie like that? He looked up at me and there were tears on his face. I love you, he said. I love both of you. I know that doesn't make sense and I know it doesn't make it right, but it's the truth. I couldn't choose. I couldn't give up either of you. So I just kept going, kept living both lives, and I told myself I'd figure it out eventually. But I never did. And now it's all falling apart. I felt like I was going to be sick. I stumbled past him and into the bathroom, where I bent over the toilet and dry heaved. Nothing came up, but my whole body was shaking with the force of it. When I finally stopped, I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the wall and tried to breathe. Tried to think. Tried to figure out what this meant for my life, for everything I thought I knew. After a while, Robert knocked softly on the door. Dorothy, he said. Please. Let me explain more. Let me tell you everything. I opened the door and looked at him. I was still sitting on the floor and he was standing in the doorway looking down at me. Tell me everything, I said flatly. Start from the beginning and tell me every single thing. He slid down and sat on the floor across from me in the narrow hallway. We must have looked ridiculous, 2 middle-aged people sitting on the floor of their suburban home, while one confessed to leading a double life for nearly 2 decades. I met Linda in 1981, he started. I was 26 years old and working my first real job out of college. She was a receptionist at the company. She was beautiful and funny and kind, and I fell hard for her. We got married a year later in 1982. Small wedding, just a courthouse ceremony and dinner with a few friends. Her family wasn't around much and mine, well, you know how my family is. Scattered. Distant. So it was just us, really. Just Linda and me building a life together. Things were good for a few years, he continued. We bought a small house in Modesto. We both worked. We were happy. But then Linda got sick. It started with fatigue and pain in her joints. At first the doctors thought it was just stress or maybe early onset arthritis. But it got worse. She started having trouble walking, trouble doing basic things. It took 2 years to get a diagnosis. Multiple sclerosis, progressive MS, the kind that just keeps getting worse. By 1985, she'd had to quit her job. By 1986, she needed a wheelchair sometimes. By 1990, she needed it all the time. I watched him talk and tried to feel something. Sympathy maybe or understanding. But all I felt was numb. That's terrible, I said. But it doesn't explain why you married me. Why you committed bigamy. Why you lied for 15 years. I'm getting there, he said. Just let me finish. Taking care of Linda was hard. Physically hard, emotionally hard, financially hard. The medical bills were enormous. Insurance covered some of it but not all. I was working constantly trying to keep up with the bills, trying to be there for her, trying to maintain some kind of normal life. But I was drowning. I was so tired all the time. So stressed. So lonely. Linda was sick and I loved her, but the woman I married was disappearing into this disease, and I didn't know how to handle it. And then I met you, he said, looking at me now. It was 1986. You were working at that restaurant in Fresno, remember? I came in for lunch one day during a sales call. You were my waitress. You had this smile that just lit up the whole room. We talked for maybe 5 minutes total, but I couldn't stop thinking about you. I came back the next week. And the next. And pretty soon I was driving down to Fresno once a week just to have lunch at your restaurant and talk to you for a few minutes. I remembered those lunches. I'd been 36 years old and divorced from my first husband for 3 years. Working at that restaurant to make ends meet, living in a small apartment, wondering if I'd ever meet someone again. And then Robert started coming in. Handsome, charming Robert with his easy smile and his respectful manner. He always asked about my day, always left a good tip, always made me feel seen and valued. After a few months, he asked me out to dinner. I said yes. 3 months later, we were dating seriously. 6 months after that, he proposed. I thought I'd won the lottery. I thought I'd found my second chance at happiness. I fell in love with you, Robert said. Completely, totally in love. And I told myself I'd leave Linda. I'd divorce her and marry you properly. But every time I tried to bring it up with Linda, I couldn't do it. She was so sick, Dorothy. She needed me so much. How could I abandon her when she was fighting this disease? How could I leave her alone when she couldn't even walk? So I told myself I'd wait. Wait until she was more stable. Wait until her condition improved. Wait until the time was right. But the time was never right. And I kept falling more in love with you. And when you said yes to my proposal, I just thought I can make this work. I can take care of both of you. I can keep both of you happy. I can do this. So you committed fraud, I said. My voice was hard now. Anger starting to break through the numbness. You married me when you were already married to someone else. That's not just lying, Robert. That's a crime. I know, he said quietly. I know it is. But I was desperate. I couldn't lose you. And I couldn't leave her. So I just did it. I married you at City Hall and I didn't tell Linda, and I told myself it would be okay. That I'd figure it out. That somehow I'd make it work. And for 15 years I did make it work. I split my time between you and her. I gave you both as much of myself as I could. I provided for both households. I loved you both. How, I asked. How did you manage it? The money, the time, the logistics of living two completely separate lives? He rubbed his face with both hands. The $500 a month to Marcus, that was actually going to an account I set up for Linda. For her medical expenses and household bills. Her disability check doesn't cover everything. I had to supplement it. And the business trips, those were real sales trips sometimes, but mostly I was just driving back and forth between Modesto and Fresno. Spending a few days with her, then a few days with you. Keeping track of what I told each of you. Making sure I never slipped up. Never mentioned the wrong name or the wrong detail. It sounds exhausting, I said. It was, he admitted. It is. I'm tired, Dorothy. I've been tired for 15 years. But I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to fix it. So I just kept going. Kept lying. Kept pretending. And now Marcus has ruined everything by telling you the truth. Marcus didn't ruin anything, I snapped. You ruined everything. You ruined my life. You made me an unwitting participant in a crime. You made me live a lie for 15 years. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about you, about us, it's all fake. It's all been fake this whole time. I'm sorry, he said, and he was crying now. Real tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry, Dorothy. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen. I just loved you both and I couldn't choose. I didn't want to choose. But I should have. I know I should have. I just didn't have the courage. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay standing. I need you to leave, I said. What? He said, looking up at me. I need you to leave this house right now, I repeated. I can't look at you. I can't be in the same room with you. I need you to pack a bag and get out. Dorothy, please, he started to say, but I cut him off. Now, Robert. Get out now. Or I'm calling the police and reporting you for bigamy. Is that what you want? Do you want me to call the police right now? He scrambled to his feet, his face pale. No, he said. No, please don't do that. I'll go. I'll pack a bag and I'll go. But Dorothy, we need to talk about this more. We need to figure out what to do. We'll talk later, I said. But right now I need you gone. I watched him walk into our bedroom and throw some clothes into a duffel bag. Took him maybe 10 minutes. He came back out to the living room where I was standing with my arms crossed, waiting. Where will you go? I asked. To her, he said quietly. I'll go stay with Linda. Of course you will, I said bitterly. Tell her I said hello. Tell her she's married to a liar and a criminal. He looked at me one more time, his face full of pain and regret, and then he left. I heard his car start in the driveway, heard him back out and drive away. And then I was alone in the house. In the home I'd shared with my husband for 15 years. The home where we'd hosted dinner parties and celebrated holidays and made love and argued and lived what I thought was a normal, happy marriage. Except it had all been a lie. Every bit of it. I sank down onto the couch and stared at the wall. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to set. Long enough for the room to go dark around me. I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat there in the darkness and tried to process what had just happened. Tried to understand how my life had just imploded in the span of a few hours. Tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. My husband was a bigamist. He'd been married to another woman the entire time he'd been married to me, which meant I wasn't really married at all, which meant everything about my life for the past 15 years had been built on fraud and lies. The house we lived in, was it even legally mine? Our bank accounts, were they legitimate? Our tax returns, had we been filing fraudulently? What about health insurance, car insurance, all the legal and financial entanglements that come with marriage? Were any of them valid? Was I even legally Dorothy Chen? Or was I still Dorothy Huang from my first marriage? My mind spun with questions I had no answers to. Legal questions, financial questions, personal questions. Did Linda know about me now? Would Robert tell her? What would happen when she found out? Would she hate me even though I'd been lied to just as much as she had? Would she think I was some kind of home wrecker, some other woman trying to steal her husband? Even though I'd had no idea she existed? And what about Robert's family? His brother Marcus, who'd inadvertently blown this whole thing wide open. His Aunt Patricia and all those cousins who'd been at the funeral. They'd seen the confrontation in the parking lot. They'd seen enough to know something was very wrong. How long before the whole family knew? How long before everyone knew that Robert Chen had been living a double life, married to two women simultaneously for 15 years? The shame of it washed over me in waves. Not shame for what I'd done, because I hadn't done anything wrong, but shame at being the fool. The idiot who'd been lied to for 15 years and never suspected a thing. How could I have been so blind? How could I have never noticed? Were there signs I'd missed? Red flags I'd ignored? I thought back over the years trying to remember anything that should have tipped me off. The business trips, but those had seemed legitimate. He worked in sales. Salespeople travel. That was normal. The fact that I'd never met most of his family, but he'd always said they were distant, disconnected. Some families are like that. I'd believed him. The way he always paid the bills, always handled the finances. I'd never questioned it because he was good at it and I was happy to let him take care of it. Had he been hiding things in the finances? Were there two sets of accounts I didn't know about? The checks to Marcus. That should have been a red flag, shouldn't it? $500 a month for 15 years to a brother he never talked to, never saw, never mentioned. Why hadn't I insisted on meeting Marcus? Why hadn't I pushed harder to understand their relationship? But I believed Robert when he said it was complicated. I believed him when he said Marcus needed help, and that family obligation required him to provide it. I thought it showed what a good man he was. God, I'd been such a fool. I finally got up from the couch and turned on a light. The living room looked exactly the same as it had this morning. Same furniture, same pictures on the walls, same decorative pillows I'd picked out at HomeGoods 3 years ago. But it all looked different now. Foreign. Like I was seeing it for the first time. I walked through the house room by room, looking at everything with new eyes. The kitchen where we'd cooked dinner together countless times. The bedroom where we'd slept side by side for 15 years. The guest room that we'd always said would be a nursery someday, even though I was probably too old now at 51. That had been a lie too, hadn't it? He'd never intended to have children with me. He probably already had children with her. Oh God. Did he have children with Linda? Were there kids I didn't know about? I felt sick again, but I forced myself to keep moving, keep looking. The bathroom with both our toothbrushes in the holder. His razor on the counter. The medicine cabinet with his blood pressure medication and my vitamins. The closet with his clothes hanging next to mine. Evidence of a shared life. Evidence of a marriage. Except it wasn't a marriage. It was a fraud. I went into his office, the small third bedroom he used as a workspace. He had a desk there with a computer, filing cabinets, bookshelves. I'd rarely gone in there because it was his space and I respected his privacy. What a joke. What privacy? What respect? He'd been lying to me for 15 years. He deserved no privacy, no respect. I started opening drawers, rifling through files, turning on his computer. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Evidence, I suppose. Proof. Documentation of his double life. Something that would help me understand the scope of what he'd done. In the filing cabinet, I found folders labeled with innocuous names. Utilities. Insurance. Taxes. Investment accounts. I pulled them all out and started going through them page by page. And that's when I started to see it. The shadow life he'd been living. There was a folder for the Modesto house. A mortgage statement in his name only. Utility bills for an address I didn't recognize. Property tax statements. He owned that house. He'd owned it the whole time he'd been living with me. In another folder, I found insurance documents. 2 car insurance policies. One for the car he drove, the one parked in our garage. Another for a vehicle I'd never heard of. And health insurance. 2 policies. One for him and me as a married couple. Another for him and Linda Martinez as a married couple. Both policies active. Both policies paid up to date. How was this even possible? How had insurance companies not caught this? How had the government not noticed when he filed taxes? I pulled out tax returns and started going through them. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the numbers. But there they were. Years and years of tax returns filed jointly. Robert and Dorothy Chen. Married, filing jointly. Taking all the deductions and credits that came with being married. But where were the returns for Robert and Linda? Did they file separately? Did he file as head of household with her? How did he keep all of this straight? How did he not get caught? I found another folder, this one tucked in the back of a drawer. No label. I opened it and my breath caught. Inside were photographs. Pictures of Robert with a woman I didn't recognize. She was in a wheelchair, dark hair, pretty face, smiling at the camera. Robert had his arm around her. They were in front of a Christmas tree. In another photo, they were at what looked like a restaurant, him sitting next to her wheelchair, both of them holding up champagne glasses. Another photo showed them in a backyard, her in the wheelchair, him kneeling next to her, a dog sitting between them. These were intimate photos. The kind of photos you take when you're building a life with someone. When you love them. When they're your family. I sank into Robert's desk chair and stared at those photographs. This was Linda. This was his other wife. The woman he'd been married to for 19 years. The woman he'd been taking care of while simultaneously being married to me. She looked nice. Kind. In the photos she looked happy. Did she know what he was doing? Could she possibly know that he had another wife an hour away? That he was splitting his time between 2 households, 2 women, 2 lives? Robert had said she didn't know, that she thought he traveled for work. But could that really be true? Could someone really be that blind to what was happening in their own marriage? Then again, I'd been that blind. I'd had no idea for 15 years. So maybe it was possible. Maybe we'd both been living in ignorance while Robert juggled his two lives, his two loves, his two lies. I put the photos back in the folder and kept searching. I found checkbooks for accounts I'd never seen. Bank statements for accounts in his name only. Credit card bills for cards I didn't know he had. A whole financial infrastructure built to support his double life. And the numbers, God, the numbers. He'd been spending so much money. Maintaining two households wasn't cheap. Between mortgages and utilities and medical expenses and just the cost of daily living, he had to be hemorrhaging money. How had he afforded all of this on a salesman's salary? I found more documents. Investment accounts that had been liquidated. A second mortgage on the Modesto house. Credit card debt. Lots of credit card debt. Robert was in deep financial trouble. We were in deep financial trouble. Or was I even part of the we? Was any of this my responsibility? I had no idea. I had no idea what my legal standing was, what my rights were, what I was liable for. I needed a lawyer. I needed help. I needed someone to tell me what the hell I was supposed to do now. I looked at the clock on Robert's computer. It was past midnight. I'd been sitting in this office for hours going through his things, uncovering the layers of lies. I was exhausted, but I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. How could I sleep? How could I lie down in that bed where I'd slept next to my husband for 15 years and close my eyes? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photographs. Robert and Linda. His arm around her. Both of them smiling. Both of them happy. I left the office and went back to the living room. I sat on the couch and pulled out my phone. I had no idea who to call at this hour. But I needed to talk to someone. I needed to say out loud what had happened. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that this was really happening, that my whole life really had just fallen apart in the course of a single day. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at my sister's name, Jane. She lived in Portland with her husband and 2 kids. We talked every week or so, but we weren't especially close. Different lives, different priorities. But she was my sister. She was family. If I couldn't call her now, when could I? The phone rang 4 times before she answered, her voice groggy with sleep. Hello? Dorothy? What's wrong? Is everything okay? No, I said, and my voice broke. No, Jane, everything is not okay. She was instantly alert. What happened? Are you hurt? Is it Robert? Is he okay? It's Robert, I said. Jane, he's been lying to me. He's been lying to me for 15 years. I heard rustling like she was sitting up in bed. What do you mean? What did he lie about? He's married, I said. He's married to someone else. He's been married to another woman the whole time he's been married to me. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Jane said, What? What are you talking about? So I told her. I told her everything. About the funeral, about meeting Marcus, about the revelation that the money wasn't going to Robert's brother, about the confrontation at home, Robert's confession, the other wife Linda in Modesto, the MS, the caregiving, the double life. I told her about finding the documents, the photos, the evidence of a whole secret existence I'd known nothing about. I talked for probably 30 minutes straight while Jane listened in silence. When I finally stopped, finally ran out of words, she said, Holy shit, Dorothy. Holy shit. I know, I said. I laughed, but it came out sounding slightly hysterical. I know. It's insane. It's completely insane. Where is he now? Jane asked. I don't know, I said. He left. I made him leave. He said he was going to Linda's house in Modesto. Good, Jane said fiercely. Good. That son of a bitch. Dorothy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I don't know where to start. Jane stayed on the phone with me until almost 3 in the morning. She made me promise to call a lawyer first thing on Monday, made me promise not to make any rash decisions, made me promise to take care of myself. When we finally hung up, I lay down on the couch with a blanket and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Robert. I stared at his name on the screen for a long moment before answering. Hello, I said. My voice sounded rough, worn out. Dorothy, he said. How are you? I almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. How am I? Robert, how do you think I am? My entire life just fell apart. How do you think I'm doing? I'm sorry, he said quickly. That was a stupid question. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay. I'm alive if that's what you're asking. Physically unharmed. Emotionally destroyed but alive. There was a pause. Can we talk? He asked. In person? I need to explain more. I need to tell you everything. You told me plenty yesterday, I said. You're a bigamist. You've been lying to me for 15 years. You have another wife. What else is there to explain? Linda knows now, he said quietly. I told her last night. About you. About everything. Oh, I said. And how did she take it? About as well as you did, he admitted. She threw me out too. She's devastated. She's angry. She feels just as betrayed as you do. Good, I said coldly. She should feel betrayed. She was betrayed. We both were. Dorothy, please, he said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. Please let me come over so we can talk. We need to figure out what to do. We need to make a plan. Fine, I said. Come over. But Robert, I'm not making any promises. I'm not forgiving you. I just want answers. I want to understand how you did this. How you lived like this for so long. I'll be there in an hour, he said. I hung up and went to shower and change clothes. I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My face was pale and drawn. My eyes were red and swollen from crying. I looked 10 years older than I had yesterday morning. I looked like someone who'd been through a trauma, which I suppose I had been. When Robert arrived, I didn't invite him to sit down. We stood in the living room facing each other like strangers. He looked terrible too. Exhausted, defeated, older. Talk, I said. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out. And Robert, if I catch you in one more lie, even one, I'm calling the police right now and reporting you. Do you understand? He nodded and began to speak. He told me how he'd met Linda when they were both young and starting their careers. How they'd fallen in love quickly, gotten married in a simple ceremony, bought their first house together. How they'd been happy for those first few years, planning a future, talking about having children someday. Then Linda's symptoms started. The fatigue, the weakness, the strange pains that doctors couldn't explain. It took years to get the MS diagnosis, and by then she was already declining rapidly. Robert described watching the woman he loved slowly lose her ability to walk, to work, to do the things she'd once done without thinking. He talked about the medical bills piling up, the insurance battles, the constant stress of being a caregiver, while also trying to maintain a full-time job. I didn't interrupt, just listened as he painted a picture of those difficult years. Then he got to the part about meeting me. He'd been married to Linda for 4 years when we met. He was burned out, exhausted, drowning in the weight of caring for someone with a progressive illness. Coming to that restaurant in Fresno had been an escape for him, a brief respite from his real life. And when he met me, when we started talking, he said it felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. I made him feel normal again. I made him feel like himself instead of just a caregiver, just a nurse, just someone whose whole life revolved around doctor appointments and medication schedules and insurance claims. He knew it was wrong to pursue me while married to Linda. He knew he should have either stayed faithful to his wife or divorced her before starting something new. But he couldn't do either of those things. He couldn't give me up because I represented hope and happiness, and a future that wasn't defined by illness. And he couldn't leave Linda because she needed him and he still loved her in his way. So he made the catastrophic decision to try to have both. To marry me fraudulently and maintain his marriage to Linda simultaneously. To split himself in half and try to be everything to both of us. How did you keep it all straight? I asked when he paused. How did you remember what you told each of us? How did you not slip up? He rubbed his face tiredly. It was hard, he admitted. Especially in the beginning. I had to be so careful all the time. I kept notes on my phone about conversations I'd had with each of you. I made sure never to bring up things with one of you that only happened with the other. I created completely separate lives. With Linda, I was the devoted caregiver. The husband who stayed by her side through sickness. With you, I was the successful salesman with a bright future. I never mixed the two worlds. Never brought anything from one life into the other. It was like living as two different people. And the money? I asked. How did you afford all of it? He looked ashamed. I made decent money from sales, but it wasn't enough for 2 households, especially with Linda's medical expenses. So I took out loans. Credit cards, personal loans, a second mortgage on the Modesto house. I liquidated my retirement accounts. I borrowed money from colleagues under various pretenses. I was always robbing Peter to pay Paul, shuffling money around, staying one step ahead of collections. It's all about to come crashing down, Dorothy. I'm drowning in debt. I don't know how much longer I could have kept this up anyway. So your whole house of cards was about to collapse, I said. And now it has. Now both of us know the truth and you're going to face the consequences. What are those consequences going to be, Robert? Prison? Because bigamy is a felony. You could go to prison for this. I know, he said quietly. I know I could. And maybe I deserve to. I've hurt both of you so badly. I've ruined both your lives. I never meant for any of this to happen, but intentions don't matter much now, do they? The damage is done. No, I agreed. Intentions don't matter. What matters is what you did. What you chose to do again and again for 15 years. Every morning you woke up and chose to lie. Every time you drove between Fresno and Modesto, you chose to maintain this fraud. Every time you kissed me or told me you loved me, you were choosing to deceive me. Those were choices, Robert. Not accidents. Not mistakes. Choices. He had no defense for that. He just nodded miserably and stared at the floor. What do you want me to do now, he asked. What can I do to make any of this better? You can't make it better, I said. You can't undo 15 years of lies. But you can start telling the truth. You can be honest with me and with Linda about everything. About the finances, about the legal situation, about all of it. And you need to get a lawyer because you're going to need one. For the bigamy charges if either of us presses them. For the divorce because yes, Robert, I want a divorce. Or whatever the equivalent is since we were never legally married in the first place. I want out. I want away from you. I want to salvage whatever I can from this wreckage and rebuild my life without you in it. I understand, he said. I'll get a lawyer. I'll cooperate with whatever you need. Dorothy, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't help. I know it doesn't change anything. But I need you to know that I did love you. I do love you. This wasn't about not loving you. It was about being a coward who couldn't make hard choices. Get out, I said. I'm done listening to you. Just get out. He left without another word. After he was gone, I called Jane back and told her about the conversation. Then I called a lawyer's office and left a message with their answering service explaining that I needed to speak to someone urgently about a bigamy situation. Monday morning, a lawyer named Patricia Simmons called me back. I went to her office that afternoon and told her the whole story. She listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and let out a low whistle. Mrs. Chen, she said. Or I suppose it's Mrs. Huang since your marriage to Robert wasn't legal. This is quite a situation. The good news is that you're not liable for any of the debts he incurred. The bad news is that you have very little legal standing as his spouse since the marriage was fraudulent. We'll need to untangle your finances, figure out what assets you have claim to, and potentially file charges against him for bigamy if you choose to do so. Do I have to file charges, I asked, or can I just walk away? You can walk away, she said, but I'd advise against it. Not out of vengeance but for practical reasons. If charges are filed and he's convicted, it creates a legal record of the fraud. That could be important for any financial claims you make, for dissolution of property, for protecting yourself from any debt collectors who might come after you. You were an innocent victim in this. You need that documented legally. Okay, I said. Then let's file charges. Let's do whatever we need to do to protect me, and to hold him accountable for what he did. Good, Patricia said. We'll get started on the paperwork. In the meantime, I want you to gather every document you can find. Bank statements, tax returns, mortgage papers, insurance documents, everything. Bring it all to me and we'll go through it together. Over the next few weeks, I did exactly that. I went through every drawer, every file, every piece of paper in that house. I made copies of everything and brought it to Patricia. We spent hours going through it all, piecing together the financial picture of Robert's double life. It was worse than I'd thought. He owed over $200,000 in credit card debt. The Modesto house had been refinanced twice and was underwater. He'd borrowed against his life insurance policy. He had unpaid medical bills and collections. His retirement accounts were empty. The man was financially ruined, and he'd been on the verge of dragging both me and Linda down with him. Patricia helped me close our joint bank accounts and open new ones in my name only. She helped me remove myself from joint credit cards. She helped me document every asset that was solely in my name, which wasn't much. The house in Fresno was in both our names, but since the marriage wasn't legal, my claim to it was shaky. We'd have to fight for it. She filed a police report about the bigamy, and the district attorney agreed to prosecute. Robert was arrested and charged with 1 count of bigamy and multiple counts of fraud related to the false marriage documents. He posted bail and was released, but now he had a court date looming, and he had lost everything. Both his wives had thrown him out. His family knew what he'd done, and most of them wanted nothing to do with him. His finances were destroyed. His reputation was in tatters. He'd sacrificed everything in his attempt to have it all, and now he had nothing. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. But mostly I just felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left nothing but a shell. I went through the motions of daily life, but nothing felt real. I'd wake up in the morning and for a split second everything would be normal. Then I'd remember. Robert was gone. My marriage was a lie. My whole life for the past 15 years had been built on fraud. And I'd have to face another day of dealing with lawyers and paperwork, and the endless task of untangling myself from the mess he'd created. I stopped going to our church. I couldn't face the questions, the pitying looks, the whispered gossip. I stopped attending my book club for the same reason. I called in sick to my job at the library where I'd worked part-time for 8 years. I just couldn't face people. Couldn't face their curiosity or their sympathy or their judgment. I wanted to disappear. Jane called me every day to check on me. She offered to fly down from Portland, but I told her not to. I wasn't ready for visitors. I wasn't ready for comfort or pep talks or anything. I just wanted to be alone with my grief and anger. But Jane was persistent. She kept calling. She kept checking in. She kept reminding me that I wasn't alone, even when I felt completely isolated. One day, about a month after everything fell apart, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer it. I was in sweatpants and hadn't showered in 2 days. But the person kept ringing, kept knocking, so finally I dragged myself to the door and opened it. Standing on my porch was a woman in a wheelchair. She had dark hair streaked with gray and kind eyes that looked tired and sad. I knew immediately who she was. "Linda," I said. She nodded. "Dorothy," she replied. "Can we talk?" I hesitated for a long moment, then stepped aside and held the door open. She wheeled herself in and I closed the door behind her. We looked at each other in the hallway of the house I'd shared with her husband. The husband she'd had first. The husband who'd betrayed us both. "I don't really know what to say," I admitted. "I don't either," she said. "But I felt like we needed to meet. Face to face. Woman to woman. Not through lawyers or police reports. Just us. "Do you want some coffee?" I asked. She nodded and I led her into the kitchen. I made a pot of coffee while she sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Robert and I had eaten countless meals together. The whole situation was surreal. When the coffee was ready, I poured 2 cups and sat down across from her. "I'm sorry," we both said at the same time. Then we both laughed, short bitter laughs that held no humor. "You have nothing to be sorry for," Linda said. "Neither do you," I replied. We both fell silent, sipping our coffee, trying to figure out how to navigate this impossible conversation. Finally, Linda spoke. "I've been married to Robert for 19 years, she said. "I thought I knew him. I thought we had a good marriage despite my illness. He's been so devoted, so caring, always there when I needed him. And the whole time he had you. He had a whole other life I knew nothing about." I felt the same way, I said. "I thought we were happy. I thought he was faithful and honest. I trusted him completely. I never suspected anything was wrong." We compared notes then carefully. What Robert had told each of us, how he'd divided his time, the lies he'd told to keep us separate. Linda told me about the business trips he supposedly took, gone 3 or 4 days at a time, sometimes twice a month. Those were the days he was with me. I told her about his trips to visit family or attend sales conferences. Those were the days he was with her. Between the two of us, we reconstructed his entire pattern of deception. It was meticulous. It was calculated. It was breathtaking in its audacity and cruelty. He played us both, Linda said quietly. He used my illness to excuse his absences. Used his career to explain away his time with you. We were both so trusting. So willing to believe what he told us. Because we loved him. Because we had no reason to think he'd lie. Do you still love him? I asked. She was quiet for a long time. Part of me does, she admitted. The part that remembers who I thought he was. The man who held my hand through doctor appointments and helped me when I couldn't walk and promised to be there in sickness and health. But that man was an illusion. The real Robert is someone who could lie to 2 women for 15 years. Who could commit fraud and bigamy. Who could look both of us in the eye every day and pretend. So do I love the real Robert? No. I don't think I do. I don't think I even know the real Robert. I nodded. I feel the same way. I loved who I thought he was. But that person never existed. What about you? Linda asked. Do you hate me? I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman in a wheelchair who'd been suffering with MS for years. This woman who'd been Robert's wife first, his legitimate wife, the one he'd made real vows to. This woman who was as much a victim of his lies as I was. No, I said. I don't hate you. I wanted to. When I first found out about you, I was so angry. I thought you must have known. I thought maybe you were in on it somehow. But you weren't. You were lied to just like I was. We're both victims here. The only person to blame is Robert. She let out a long breath like she'd been holding it. I'm glad, she said. I was worried you'd see me as the enemy. As the other woman, even though technically you're the other woman. I laughed again, and this time it was almost genuine. The whole thing is so messed up, I said. There's no normal way to navigate this. No etiquette book for what to do when you discover your husband is a bigamist. We're just making it up as we go. We talked for over 2 hours. We talked about Robert, about how we'd met him, what had attracted us to him, what our lives with him had been like. We talked about the future, about the legal proceedings, about what we each wanted. Linda said she was filing for divorce. She wanted nothing more to do with Robert, even though she'd need help managing her care. She had family who could step in, she said. She'd figure it out. She wouldn't let him use her illness to manipulate her anymore. I told her I was working with a lawyer to protect myself financially and legally. That I'd agreed to press charges for the bigamy, because my lawyer said it was important for establishing the fraud. Linda nodded and said she was doing the same thing. The more we talked, the more I realized we had in common. We were both strong women who'd been deceived by the same man. We'd both trusted when we should have questioned. We'd both loved when we should have been more careful. And now we were both picking up the pieces of our shattered lives. Before Linda left, she reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you for letting me come here, she said. Thank you for hearing me out. I know this must be so strange for you. It's strange for both of us, I said. But I'm glad you came. I think I needed this. Needed to see you as a real person, not just as the other wife. Needed to know that we're on the same side in this. We exchanged phone numbers before she left and promised to stay in touch. As I watched her wheel herself down the ramp that Robert had installed on our front porch, a ramp I'd never questioned because he said it was for his elderly mother who might visit someday, I felt something shift inside me. The rage and betrayal were still there, burning hot in my chest. But alongside them was something else. A strange sense of solidarity, of shared experience. Linda and I had both been wronged by the same man. And maybe, just maybe, we could help each other heal. Over the next few months, Linda and I talked regularly. At first it was just about the legal proceedings, sharing information about lawyers and court dates. But gradually it became more. We'd talk about our days, our feelings, the process of rebuilding. We became something I never expected. Friends. Not close friends, but friendly. Connected by our shared trauma and our determination to move forward. The court case moved slowly as court cases do. Robert's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney wasn't interested. They wanted to make an example of him. Bigamy wasn't a common crime, and when it did happen, it was usually prosecuted vigorously. Robert ended up pleading guilty to avoid a trial. He was sentenced to 18 months in county jail and 5 years probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution, though how he was supposed to do that with no money and no job was anyone's guess. I didn't go to his sentencing. I couldn't face seeing him in court, hearing the details of his crimes read aloud for public record. But Linda went. She called me afterward and told me about it. He cried, she said. When the judge sentenced him, he broke down crying. Said he was sorry that he'd destroyed everything, that he wished he could take it all back. But he can't, I said. He can't take it back. He can only serve his time and live with what he's done. The financial mess took even longer to sort out. Patricia worked with Linda's lawyer to divide assets and debts. The Modesto house was sold to pay off some of Robert's debts. I fought for my share of equity in the Fresno house, and after months of legal wrangling, I got it. Enough to pay off the mortgage and have a little left over. I sold that house as soon as I could. I couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't wake up every day in the place where I'd been lied to for 15 years. I found a small condo on the other side of town. A fresh start in a new space with no memories attached. It was tiny compared to the house, but it was mine. All mine. No shared history. No ghosts of a fraudulent marriage haunting the hallways. I quit my job at the library and found a new position at a community center teaching computer skills to seniors. Paid about the same, but it was different, new, another part of my fresh start. I rejoined a gym. Started taking yoga classes. Began slowly, cautiously rebuilding a social life. People ask questions, of course. Where's Robert? What happened to your marriage? I developed a simple answer. We divorced. He wasn't the person I thought he was. Most people didn't push further. Those who did got a slightly longer version. My husband was living a double life. He had another wife. We're both better off without him. That usually ended the conversation pretty quickly. Jane came to visit 6 months after everything fell apart. By then I was living in my condo, working my new job, establishing my new routine. She took one look at me and burst into tears. What? I asked, alarmed. Why are you crying? Because you look good, she said, wiping her eyes. Dorothy, you look healthy. You look like yourself again. When this first happened, when you called me that night, I was so worried. I thought this might break you. But you're still standing. You're doing more than surviving. You're actually living. We spent a long weekend together, my sister and I. We talked about everything. About Robert and the betrayal. About Linda and our unlikely friendship. About the legal aftermath and the financial stress and the slow process of healing. Jane told me she was proud of me. That took real strength, she said. Most people would have fallen apart. Would have let something like this destroy them. But you didn't. You picked yourself up and you kept going. I didn't have a choice, I said. What was I supposed to do? Curl up and die? Give up? Let him win. Exactly, Jane said. You didn't let him win. You took control of your life and you rebuilt it on your terms. That takes courage, Dorothy. Real courage. Her words meant more to me than she probably knew. I'd been so focused on just getting through each day that I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. But she was right. I'd been strong. I'd survived something that could have destroyed me. And I was still here, still fighting, still building a life worth living. A year after the discovery, Linda called me with unexpected news. I'm getting remarried, she said. There was joy in her voice, something I hadn't heard from her before. What? I said, genuinely shocked. Linda, that's wonderful. Who is he? His name is David. He's a physical therapist I met at my clinic. He's been helping me with my MS management and we just connected. He knows everything about Robert, about the bigamy, all of it. And he doesn't care. He says the past is the past. He wants a future with me. I felt tears prick my eyes. Linda, I'm so happy for you. You deserve this. You deserve someone who will be honest with you and love you fully. Thank you, she said. And Dorothy, I want you to know that meeting you, talking to you through all of this, it helped me heal. It helped me see that what happened wasn't my fault. That I deserved better. You helped me believe I could have love again. You did the same for me, I said honestly. If we'd never talked, never become friends, I think I'd still be drowning in anger and shame. But knowing you went through the same thing, knowing we could support each other, it made all the difference. Linda's wedding was small and beautiful. She invited me and I went, sitting in the back row of the courthouse chapel where she and David exchanged vows. Watching her face light up as she said I do, watching David kneel beside her wheelchair to kiss her, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in a long time. She'd found real love. The kind built on honesty and trust. The kind we'd both been denied with Robert. At the small reception afterward, Linda wheeled over to where I was standing. Thank you for coming, she said. It means the world to me. I wouldn't have missed it, I said. You look radiant. You look happy. I am happy, she said. Finally, truly happy. And you will be too, Dorothy. I know it. I smiled. I'm getting there. Day by day, I'm getting there. Robert was released from jail after serving 14 months with good behavior. I heard about it through the legal grapevine, but I didn't reach out to him and he didn't contact me. We had nothing to say to each other. He'd served his time. We'd both moved on. That chapter was closed. I was 53 by then, 2 years past the discovery that had upended my life. I was settled in my condo, comfortable in my job, rebuilding friendships and establishing new ones. I'd started dating cautiously, nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with men I met through friends or online. I wasn't sure I'd ever trust someone enough for a serious relationship again. The wounds Robert had left were deep, but I was trying. I was open to the possibility. One evening I was at a community event at the center where I worked, a fundraiser for our senior programs. I was talking to one of my students, a sweet 78-year-old woman named Margaret who was learning to video chat with her grandchildren, when a man approached us. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Dorothy Chen?" I turned and looked at him. He was maybe 60, tall and lean with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm Dorothy Huang actually," I said. I went back to my maiden name. "Can I help you?" "I'm Thomas Park," he said, extending his hand. "I teach woodworking classes here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've seen you around but we've never officially met." I shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, Thomas." "Yes, I teach computer literacy." We chatted for a few minutes about the center, about our classes, about the fundraiser. He was easy to talk to, with a gentle humor that made me smile. Before he walked away, he said, "Would you maybe like to get coffee sometime? Just as colleagues. I know a great place downtown." I hesitated only a moment before saying yes. We exchanged numbers and he promised to call. As I watched him walk away, Margaret nudged me with her elbow. "He's handsome," she said with a mischievous grin. "And he seems nice. Don't let that one get away." I laughed. "Margaret, I'm not looking for romance. Just friendship." She gave me a knowing look. "Sometimes the best relationships start as friendships, dear. Trust me. I'm 78 years old. I know a thing or two about love." Thomas called 2 days later and we met for coffee on Saturday morning. We talked for 3 hours, losing track of time completely. He told me about his life, his divorce 10 years ago, his 2 grown daughters who lived in Seattle, his passion for woodworking and teaching. I told him about my work, my sister, my journey of rebuilding after a difficult divorce. I didn't mention the bigamy. Not yet. That was a story for later if there was a later. At the end of our coffee date, he asked if he could see me again. "I'd like that," I said. And I meant it. Thomas and I started seeing each other regularly. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates. Dinners turned into weekend hikes and visits to museums and long drives along the coast. He was patient and kind, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. After 3 months of dating, I finally told him the truth about Robert. About the bigamy, the double life, the betrayal. I was terrified he'd run, that he'd think I was damaged goods or too complicated. But Thomas just listened quietly, holding my hand across the table at the restaurant where I'd finally worked up the courage to tell him. "That must have been devastating," he said when I finished. "I can't imagine discovering something like that. How did you get through it?" "One day at a time," I said. "With help from my sister, from my lawyer, and surprisingly from Linda, Robert's other wife. We became friends through all of it." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Dorothy. Most people would have let something like that break them. But you didn't. You rebuilt your entire life from scratch. That takes real courage." His words echoed what Jane had said years before. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. Thomas and I continued dating, growing closer as the months passed. He met Jane when she came to visit, and the two of them hit it off immediately. "He's a keeper," Jane told me privately. "Don't let your past with Robert stop you from having a future with someone good." "I'm trying," I said. "It's just hard to trust again." "I know," she said. "But Thomas isn't Robert. He's shown you who he is. Believe him." On my 55th birthday, Thomas took me to dinner at a beautiful restaurant overlooking the ocean. After dessert, he reached across the table and took my hand. Dorothy, he said, I know you've been hurt. I know you have every reason to be cautious. But I want you to know that I love you. I'm not in a hurry and I'm not going anywhere. I just needed you to know how I feel. I felt tears spring to my eyes. I love you too, I said. It scared me to say it, scared me to be vulnerable again. But it was true. Somewhere along the way, despite my fears and my scars, I'd fallen in love with this good, honest, patient man. We got engaged 6 months later and married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Linda came to the wedding, now happily married to David for 3 years. Seeing her there, seeing the joy on her face as she watched me marry someone who truly loved me, felt like closure. We'd both survived Robert's betrayal. We'd both found genuine happiness on the other side. My marriage to Thomas has been everything my marriage to Robert wasn't. It's built on honesty and trust and genuine partnership. We've been together now for 17 years, and I can say without hesitation that these have been the happiest years of my life. Thomas knows everything about me, the good and the bad, the scars and the fears. And he loves me anyway. Completely, honestly, faithfully. I'm 74 years old now, and when I look back on that terrible day at the funeral when I met Marcus and my world fell apart, I feel something unexpected. Gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain or the betrayal, but gratitude for what came after. For the strength I discovered in myself. For the friendship I built with Linda. For the new life I created from the ashes of the old one. For Thomas and the love we share. If Robert hadn't been exposed, I would have lived the rest of my life in ignorance, married to a man who was lying to me every single day. I would have wasted decades more on a relationship that was built on fraud. Instead, the truth set me free. It destroyed me for a while, yes, but it also gave me the opportunity to rebuild myself into someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who knows her own worth. I saw Robert one last time about 5 years ago. I was grocery shopping and turned a corner in the produce section, and there he was. He looked old, worn down by life. His hair was completely gray, his face lined and tired. We made eye contact and for a moment neither of us knew what to do. Then he nodded slightly. Dorothy, he said quietly. Robert, I replied. How are you? Getting by, he said. Working as a bookkeeper for a small company. Living alone. Trying to make amends where I can, though I know nothing I do will ever be enough. No, I agreed. It won't. But I hope you've learned something from all of this. I have, he said. I've learned that trying to have everything means you end up with nothing. I've learned that lies always catch up to you eventually. And I've learned that I destroyed the 2 best things that ever happened to me because I was too much of a coward to make hard choices. We stood there in the produce section for another moment. 2 people who'd once promised to love each other forever. Now strangers connected only by a painful past. I hope you find peace, Robert, I said finally. I really do. And I meant it. I wasn't angry anymore. I'd let go of that rage years ago because carrying it was too exhausting. He'd already lost everything that mattered. He'd served his time in jail and would spend the rest of his life living with the consequences of his choices. There was nothing more I needed from him. Not an apology, not an explanation, not anything. I'd already moved on. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And Dorothy, for what it's worth, I really did love you. Both of you. I just loved myself more. That's the problem, isn't it? I nodded and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw him. Linda called me about a year ago with sad news. Robert had passed away from a heart attack at 71. The funeral would be small, she said. Just a few people. Did I want to come? I thought about it for a long time before deciding yes. Not for him, but for closure. For the final goodbye to that chapter of my life. The service was simple, held at a small chapel with maybe 15 people in attendance. Linda was there with David, a few of Robert's former colleagues, some distant relatives. Thomas came with me, holding my hand as we sat in the back row. The minister talked about redemption and forgiveness, about how Robert had spent his final years trying to make peace with his past, about how he'd volunteered at a community center teaching financial literacy, trying to help others avoid the mistakes he'd made. After the service, Linda wheeled over to me. Thank you for coming, she said. I know it couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted. But I needed to be here. Needed to close this door completely. She nodded. Me too. He was part of both our lives for better or worse. Mostly worse, but still. He was part of our story. Standing at Robert's graveside as they lowered his casket into the ground, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for wasted potential, for all the pain he'd caused, for the lonely end he'd met. Relief that this chapter was truly finally over. And yes, a small amount of pity for a man who'd wanted so much that he'd destroyed everything trying to have it all. But mostly I felt grateful. Grateful for my life now. For Thomas standing beside me, solid and real and honest. For the friendship I'd built with Linda out of shared trauma. For my sister who'd supported me through the darkest times. For the strength I'd found in myself when I had no choice but to be strong. Robert's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but in the end it had set me free. Free to discover who I really was beneath the role of wife and partner. Free to build a life based on my own choices and values. Free to love again, this time with wisdom and caution but also with hope. If I could go back and talk to that 51-year-old woman standing in the church parking lot, hearing for the first time that her entire marriage was built on lies, I would tell her this. You're going to survive this. I know it doesn't feel like it right now. I know you feel like your world is ending. And in a way it is. The life you knew, the future you imagined, the man you thought you married, all of that is gone. But you're not gone. You're still here. Still breathing. Still standing. And you're stronger than you know. You're going to get through this day and the next day and the day after that. You're going to find a good lawyer and protect yourself. You're going to meet Linda and discover that she's not your enemy but your ally. You're going to rebuild your life piece by piece. It won't be easy. There will be days when you want to give up. Days when the pain feels overwhelming. Days when you wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. But you will. You'll heal. You'll grow. You'll become someone stronger and wiser than you ever were before. And one day, years from now, you'll meet a man named Thomas. A good man. An honest man. A man who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. And you'll take that leap of faith again. Even though you're scared. Even though you've been hurt. And it will be worth it. All the pain, all the struggle, all the hard work of rebuilding. It will all be worth it because you'll end up with a life that's truly yours. A life built on truth and honesty and genuine love. So hang on. Keep going. Trust that there's something better waiting for you on the other side of this nightmare. Because there is. Promise you there is. I'm 74 years old now, and I can honestly say I'm happy. Truly deeply happy. I have a husband who cherishes me. I have friends who support me. I have a life filled with purpose and meaning and joy. The scars from Robert's betrayal are still there. They probably always will be. But they don't define me anymore. They're just part of my story. Part of the journey that brought me here to this moment, to this life. And if my story can help even one person who's going through something similar, if it can give hope to someone who's discovered their own spouse's betrayal, then it was worth sharing. You can survive this. You can rebuild. You can find happiness again. It won't look like what you planned. It might not happen on the timeline you want. But it can happen. It will happen. If you're willing to do the work, to face the pain, to keep moving forward one day at a time. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning a new chapter. And that chapter can be beautiful if you let it. Trust yourself. Trust the process. Trust that you deserve better than lies and betrayal. Trust that there's a future waiting for you that's brighter than you can imagine right now. I'm living proof that it's possible. That you can take the worst thing that's ever happened to you and use it as a foundation to build something better. Something real. Something lasting. So don't give up. Keep going. Your best days aren't behind you. They're still ahead, waiting for you to step into them. And when you do, you'll understand that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the best thing that ever happened to you. Not because the pain was good, but because of who you became while learning to survive it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.